All right. Hey, welcome here. And this is going to be the June 14th Sunday school lesson. We're recording this now on Wednesday the 10th, right?
Yep, June 10th.
Wednesday, June 10th. So we'll go ahead and we'll start off with the word of prayer. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for your word. Thank you for this time and opportunity to study it, and just to pray that we are able to learn more about you, find our knowledge and understanding in you, so that we can become wise people and better followers of your Son Christ. So, Lord, we just pray for this time. Give us a good discussion, and let it be fruitful to all involved, and a blessing to you as well. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so this quarter, or at least the June lessons, are about wisdom here from Proverbs. And so last week I recorded a lesson on Proverbs 1, and today's lesson comes from Proverbs 2, 1 through 11. And so we'll start off here. In that lesson that I did last week, I had said, what is your definition of wisdom? And any wise sayings from parents, because that was part of the Proverbs in there as well. So we'll just go around the room here and tell me what you came up with there. So we'll start with Debbie.
Well, start with me. So I don't have any wise wisdom from my parents. I lost my dad when I was 10. And I did not get along with my mother. And I've been married since I was 15 years old. So.
Greg looks surprised.
To
well, it doesn't have to.
My first husband that's sitting right next to me.
It doesn't have to be from parents, but from other people. Anything that sticks out of wise sayings that people have shared with you?
Well, I thought what you said last week or last night, which was last week. I just listened to you last night. I thought that was pretty cool what you said, that you compared wisdom and knowledge to a stove. And I thought that was pretty cool what you said.
That's my go-to for when we talk. I do this for like in classes and stuff like that.
And
it gets
I never
the kids
heard
thinking like, yeah, I guess so.
I never heard that before.
Yeah.
So I wrote that down quickly. That knowledge was that the stove is hot, and wisdom is don't touch it.
Right. Knowledge is knowing the stove is hot. Wisdom is knowing not to touch it or not touching it.
Right. Yeah. And I thought that was pretty cool. But the first thing that I thought of was wisdom was from Proverbs 8 was wisdom is Jesus. And I get excited hearing that wisdom is Jesus. And because Jesus was with the Father in the beginning. Yeah. So I get excited over Proverbs 8. That's where wisdom comes to me.
Good.
From Proverbs 8.
Good.
That's where my understanding of wisdom is.
Yeah. Good. How about you, Greg? Anything that you want to add?
Don't forget where you came from. You can learn from a private. Basically, meaning you can learn from anybody. I say learn from a private because being, with a military background,
right?
And as you gain, promotions and move up the ladder, sometimes the leaders forget that they were once those folks doing the labor, doing the work, and then you at one time may have thought, well, I have a good idea. And you certainly hope that somebody above you would listen to you about that good idea. So as as I would move up the rank, it's just something my father told me. Don't forget where I came from, and you can learn from anybody.
Yeah. Good.
That's about it right now. All I can think of right now.
Yeah. Thank you. about you, Phil?
Yeah, I'm thinking about my parents, and that's just a life lesson in action. My remembrances of them. My dad, I only saw him get angry twice. One was at a cow
On your phone?
Yes.
kicking off the milker.
Mhm.
The other was, and his anger was controlled also. The other was to my older brother when he almost burned the house down. But the extent of that was he didn't even raise his voice. He had a pretty pretty big hand. He just thumped his forefinger into my brother's chest and said, "Why did you do that?" So, but don't waste a lot of time being angry.
Yeah.
And I never heard either one of them say anything bad about anybody. And one of the other things I would say, and this wasn't from my parents, but from a guy that I work with, coaching youth sports, said, don't worry about things you have no control over.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, if you do that, then the other side of that is do what you can do where God planted you. You're here for a reason. Wherever God puts you, you're there for a reason. And if you do that, do your job where you are, things will be good.
Mm-hmm.
You can make a difference, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
So part of wisdom of being knowing when to speak and when to listen.
Yeah.
What to say and what not to say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and know
Yeah.
your values. My wife was reading this week and she gave me a quote. She said, every time you compromise, a bit of your spirit dies.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is your wife there with you? She'd like to speak?
Got anything to say, Elaine?
I don't have anything to say.
That's all right. Just wanted to make sure.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Phil. Steve.
Well, some bits of wisdom that I have learned over the years is don't eat yellow snow.
That was a good one. Yes.
I was told that as a kid. And don't spit into the wind. That never works either.
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm.
But the ones that the bit of wisdom was pounded into me was the treat others as you would like to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
That was one that was told to me often.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was because I wasn't treating people nicely or what, but that was what my parents told me. Treat others as you would like to be treated.
Yeah. Good. Well, hey, thank you for indulging me with that. The Proverbs 1 is all about what is wisdom and where does it come from? How do we get it? And actually, the first 9 chapters of Proverbs talks a lot about that. And so that was what the lesson here last week was on. So thank you for that. As we go forward, the working definition of wisdom that I like to use here is putting knowledge into action. So as we think about wisdom and continue on, that's what we're going to be. That's what I want you to keep in your mind. Today's lesson is entitled. I gotta get back up here to it. The value wisdom. The value of wisdom. To value wisdom. And so I want to start off here with this word value. All right. For those of you right here, when you hear that term value, what does value mean? And you can think about it in things that, what are things that are valuable to you? What do you value? What does that mean?
Well, I guess it depends on how it's being used, because if it's a value, like it's a goodbye.
Say that again.
So if it's a value, it's a goodbye. Like here's
All right,
value.
right. Gotcha.
Value
Mhm.
branded produce or value whatever, and
Right.
that's a goodbye.
So what makes that a goodbye?
It's worth the price,
Or it's worth more than the price, right?
or yes, equal or more. Yes.
Yeah.
And
Good.
Or it's just worth something to an individual. May not be worth anything to anybody else,
Mhm.
but to a certain person, something might be. What's the saying? One man's junk is another man's gold, or something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. We get that term sentimental value, right? Things that have sentimental value are things that probably have no monetary worth, but to the person that it is valuable to, it's everything, right? It's something they don't want to let go of. It's something that they'll treasure. It's something that they'll display prominently, and it's something that if lost, they'll spend a lot of time looking for, right? Good. Any other thoughts here on value?
when I think of values, I think of what's important to you,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think once we figure out what's important to us, then we need to make sure that our lives align with that.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, value. A lot of times, we'll put a term in there, worth, value, and worth together. What is something worth? So today's lesson is value wisdom, and we're going to see a couple different things here. How do we do that, and why we should do that? So let's go ahead and read here. I'm going to read Proverbs 2, 1 through 11 here first, and then we'll dive into what these verses have to say for us. So we'll start here, chapter 2 of Proverbs, verse 1. My son, if you accept my words and store up my commands within you, turning your ear to wisdom and applying your heart to understanding, and if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, and if you look for it as for silver and search for it as for hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom, and from his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He holds victory in store for the upright. He is a shield to those whose walk is blameless, for he guards the course of the just and protects the way of his faithful ones. Then you will understand what is right and just and fair, every good path. For wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion will protect you, and understanding will guard you. All right, so let's go here to verse 1. And our selection of verses here today kind of lend themselves into two sections. The first section is going to be the first 5 verses, and then 6 through 11 is the second section there. So we'll start off here with verse 1. In verse 1, we see here that we have a conditional statement. All right, what's a conditional statement? Who remembers their geometry? I think I was in geometry, right? Isn't that where we see conditional statements?
Yes.
Thank you, Phil. Steve is looking at me like, what?
I can't think back that far, Ryan.
I see.
And I love geometry too.
I see.
That was the only math course I enjoyed.
Conditional statements, right? Conditional statements are the if and then.
Right.
If something happens, then this is the result. And so that's what we see here in chapter 2, verse 1. It starts off with a conditional statement. And actually, the first 4 verses are all part of this first part of the condition. So you'll see this if. So in 2, 3, and 4, although that word if is not in front of each one of them, the way this thing is written, it is. And so these are all the first part of the conditions. If you do this, then something will happen. All right, so let's take a look at what these things are. If you do these things. So we'll start off here with the first one, which is accept my words. All right. If you accept my words. How easy is it to accept words from someone?
Depends if you like him.
Very much so, doesn't it?
If you like those words, yeah. Like
So
come for supper. Hey, I like those. Yeah, I definitely will do that.
You'll accept those words, huh?
I sure will.
Yeah, when we think about accepting someone's words, right? There's a couple. The source matters, and your relationship to that source, depending on what the words are, right? Yeah, it's interesting here. This is at least the first part of Proverbs is written by Solomon, and so Solomon is writing here and saying, "If you accept my words." And continue on, store up my commands, which we'll get to. Accept the words. Yeah, it's the source matters, right? And the words should be maybe secondary to the source. If the source is someone who you trust and who you know won't lead you astray, much what we saw in Proverbs 1 with Solomon writing, what was that there? In verse 8, listen, my son, to your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching. You know, if the source is a trusted source, and it's one that we put a lot of faith and trust in, you know, whatever the words are, we need to accept them. And so that's this first condition here, right? If you accept my words. Second one here is store up my commands within you. All right, store up my commands within you. So how do you guys go through and store up commands within yourself? Either God's commands or other people's commands, your boss or whatever. How do you internalize it? How do you store that up?
Well, if you talk to my wife, not very well, because she will tell me, well, don't you remember that I told you this?
Yeah.
It's like,
A little forgetful.
yeah.
You have to memorize.
Some selective hearing there, maybe.
Yeah, that too. But sometimes for me, it's writing things down.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Good. Debbie, you said something there. Memorize, right?
Yeah, memorize.
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
I'm in the same boat as Steve.
I see. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, I have verses. I have different even sayings, wise sayings, you know, in my office, both here at home and at the church, so that it's before me.
Sure.
We also have some on our bathroom mirror that I see every morning and
Mm-hmm.
get those verses, and you know, it's just a good way to start the day. So
Yeah.
you know, it's the reminders.
Yeah.
So that I can do what Debbie said, is have it memorized.
Right. Internalize it and get it into your system there. Right. Yeah. Store up my commands within you. Look at how do we go about doing that, and you know, think about the ways that help you memorize things. And you know, repetition is good. Having it in the forefront all the time is good. For some people, writing things down over and over again helps to internalize it. For some people, reading it once and they're good. And a lot of times, if it's a skill or something that I need to do, being able to do it in front of someone that knows how to do that skill, and hearing them give some suggestions, and then going through, and then I'm able to duplicate it. You know, that's another way that you can store up some things. Seeing someone do that skill or talk about that topic or so is really helpful as well. And so, you know, when we see this part here of storing up commands within you, you know, think of ways that work for you, of storing up those things in your mind, or all that, and work towards that.
We learn by repetition. So if we keep on repeating it over and over again, that's how we learn it,
Yeah.
by repeating it. I mean, like even when you're like music, like playing the scales, like I don't play the scales, but he used to play the clarinet. So I mean, even playing the piano, you're playing it over and over and again. You know, you get better at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Playing a game of cards, you get better at it the more that you play it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Practice, right?
repetition. Yeah, practice. You
Yeah.
get better.
Yeah.
Repetition, repeating it over again. Like I said, going through the Torah, you know, doing El Shaddai Ministries. I was speaking to Steve about that earlier. The Jewish people repeat the Torah over and over again. It's repetition. You know, they do it, the same books over every year, and they start off very young, and it's like going around the mountain over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until they get it right.
That's right. That's right. And,
And
it
you learn
sticks.
something new too.
Sure. Yeah, that's why, you know, we continue to study the Bible, because even if we studied it once, we studied it again, there's something new that we can learn, and God will talk to us in a different way, and it's all good. We can't just stop, right? You got to keep on going. You got to keep on looking at it.
In layers.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. It's good. And I think that's what I see verse 1 telling us here, right? Starting off, if you accept my words, you store up my commands within you. Verse 2 says, turning your ear to wisdom. If you turn your ear to wisdom. And this here is talking about like an active listening here, right? I don't know if anyone's ever gone through active listening exercises at all. I know a lot of times, like if I'm in a place where it's a little bit louder or so, and I want to hear someone, I'll turn my ear so that I can actually hear and focus a little bit more with that. And that's the image that I get here with verse 2, you know, turning your ear to wisdom, actively listening to that, you know, giving it your full attention and making sure that you are listening for it, turning your ear to wisdom. Second one here. Yeah.
Isn't it? It's more than just hearing, right? It's understanding.
Sure. Right. Yeah. Not like an in one ear out the other type thing. And that's what active listening helps you do too, is helps you understand it. And you're not just sitting there and yeah, you might hear it, but then what do you do with it? And I think that's why it says there, turning your ear to wisdom, right? Wisdom is this, has this action part to it. So
right.
You have to focus on it, but then you have to, be able to understand it. And the other thing here, and I mentioned it in the lesson last week, but I'll mention it here this week as well. Proverbs utilizes this Hebrew writing style here of this parallelism, where, you know, there are two lines in a statement, and either both lines highlight each other, enhance each other, or they do the contradiction to each other. And so we see that all throughout Proverbs. So for us to help understand one line, we can look at the second line to get some more insight there. And what Steve said there with the understanding, if you look at the second line here in verse 2, it says, you know, applying your heart to understanding. So you're turning your ear to wisdom, so that you know, you're doing this active listening. It's just not in one ear out the other, but the ultimate goal of that then is for this understanding, and which we see here, applying your heart to understanding. Right? We have this verb here as well, applying. So it's something that we should be doing. And when we see the heart here, a lot of times the heart in the Bible here describes our ability to reason, to think, to consider spiritual matters, those types of things. And so when we see this, if we take these two together, turning your ear to wisdom and applying your heart to understanding, right? Going through and really taking into account here, what's this wisdom saying to us? Are we understanding what we are hearing? Are we able to put into action this knowledge? This is what I get here from verse 2. Verse 3, if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, right? We see this here, insight. This word was in Proverbs 1 as well. Insight, looking for some truth there, crying aloud for understanding. What we should be pulling from this here is this first part, right? The calling out and the crying aloud. When do you do those types of things, right? Raising our voices. When do we raise our voices and have a louder volume than normal?
When we're excited,
Yeah, sure. When we're excited.
Go Phillies,
There you go. They got a perfect season so far, right?
They do. They're
Yes.
undefeated.
Undefeated season. Yeah. Yeah, we cry out when we're excited, right? We cry out and make a lot of noise if we're trying to get someone's attention. We cry aloud if we want to emphasize something or if we want to make a point, make a statement. We see here, if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, this is not just some sort of passive sitting there and like, there's understanding, very good. No, we need to be full out, crying aloud, calling out for this. It gives us the impression of this active searching, this activeness inside ourselves that we're looking for insight. We're looking for understanding with that passion that we would have at a sports game or any other time that we're excited or trying to get a point across.
Do you think it's a sense of urgency there?
Yeah.
I think that could be part of it too. Sure. Yeah. Because we cry aloud and raise our voices. Yeah. I like that part there too. When we want to get something across really quickly, or like you said, that urgency. Yeah. No, that's good insight there. I like that.
And he's asking also for the understanding. If you don't get it, then ask
Right.
aloud. Don't sit back and say, well, I don't understand it, and I guess I'm dumb.
Right.
Explain it to me.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that we'll see throughout the whole description here in Proverbs with wisdom and gaining knowledge and understanding is it's not a passive thing. It's not just a sit back and let it wash over me type thing. It's something that we need to be actively seeking for there as well. And if we don't have it, like you said there, Phil, we need to ask, and we need to be actively pursuing it and not just sitting back waiting for it to come around. And then verse 4. Verse 4 is the last of this first part of the condition statement. And if you look for it as for silver and search for it as for hidden treasure. Has anyone ever looked for silver?
Not really.
I remember as a kid looking for like monkey gold in rocks. Anybody remember doing that as a kid?
Is monkey gold like fool's gold?
Yeah.
I've never done that.
No.
Did you find any?
Yeah, we did. I mean, it's not worth anything. It's just, cool that you found, this little fool's gold or monkey gold in some rocks. It's like trying to find a 4-leaf clover,
Yeah.
You found one.
I've done that before. I guess that could be a treasure, a 4-leaf clover.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't say I ever went looking for silver or for gold and or even for hidden treasure necessarily. But let's just take this analogy here a little bit. It cracks me up when reading this. It reminds me, I don't know if anyone else had seen this or not. And you can go and Google it and you can get more detail than what I'll put here. But my understanding is this. There was this billionaire, 80-year-old, I think he's in his 80s, maybe late 80s, maybe even early 90s right now. And about, 10, 15, 20 years ago, he put $1 million worth of jewelry, gold in a box, in a treasure box, somewhere in the Rocky Mountains. And then he put out different clues for people to go and try to find this treasure. And my understanding is one of the sources of clues was his either autobiography or memoirs or whatever, and he had a poem, and then this was supposed to lead people to where this treasure was at. And he said that he had put the box there, so it was you were able to. I guess he had said it when he was in his 60s or 70s. He had put this box out in the Rocky Mountains, and so it's not like you have to do like major rock climbing and some other daring stuff to get to this treasure. But it had taken him 2 times to do this, put the treasure in, put this gold and all this other. I think that it was worth $1 million or so, like that. And as I was reading about the reason this came up was because someone had found it. Someone had finally found it, contacted the guy, I guess took a picture of where the box was at, so it was legit. Didn't want to be known, did it anonymously and all that. And so this guy that put this treasure out there, one of his remarks there or reflections on it was he was half sad that it was found because now the treasure hunt's over, but he was half glad because someone actually found it, was able to follow the clues and to find this. And throughout the last 10, 20 years, one of the things in the article talked about how the state police, I think he lives in New Mexico, so the state police in New Mexico asked him to call it off a couple of different times because there were actually, if I have it right, 4 people who died trying to look for this treasure. And so they asked him and said, hey, you need to call this off because people are going out and trying to find this, and there, it's accidents that are happening, and these 4 people died. And I guess there's a number of people who wiped out their life savings to try and go and find this treasure and all this other stuff. And, as I was reading this here, this verse 4, it made me think of what type of people or person goes after this hidden treasure. Right, it's something that's this valuable. People that are willing to risk their lives to go and find something that in the Rocky Mountains, like a very big place. Like you have to be pretty sure about your clues if you're going to go out and do this. And the more I got thinking about this, it struck me that this here is how we are to be looking for wisdom, right? The then statement, the second part of this conditional statement is in verse 5. It says, you'll understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. But we won't do that until we complete the first parts there in verses 1 through 4 of these conditions. And one of those conditions is searching for it as for silver, searching for it as for hidden treasure. And it got me thinking, if I had a map to a hidden treasure, like how much time would I actually put into doing this, and how many resources? I don't know if I would actually go and empty my bank account and quit my job and risk my life to go for looking for this treasure. But, for people that are, diehard treasure seekers, this is what this means, right? Search for it as for silver, search for it as for hidden treasure, something that's highly valuable, has a lot of worth. You're going to put all your resources, all your time, all your attention, your focus, and all that to that. And, like I said, I can't say I'm looking for silver, and I can't say I'm looking for hidden treasure, but I tell you what, I've lost my keys a number of times in my house, and I look for that. And it's consuming for a little while, and you tear your house apart looking for keys and other things, or other things that are valuable to you. You try to look for it, and it's an all-consuming type of a situation that you're in. And so hopefully there in verse 4, maybe we don't go for treasure hunts unless you're one of those that go after that treasure in the Rocky Mountain. Though it has been found. I don't know if the guy gets to keep it. I assume he does, but so it's not there anymore. But if you look it up, I think the guy just found it here this week or last week. So you should be able to find it. But this verse 4, that's the connotation there. When we're looking for wisdom, we should be, and understanding and knowledge, we should be looking as for this hidden treasure, or the silver, or you need to leave for work right now and you lost your keys, so you're looking for your key. Like that type of urgency, that type of passion and activeness and all that is what I get here from verse 4. And then we have the then statement, right? So if you accept my words, if you store up the commands within you, if you turn your ear to wisdom and apply your heart to understanding, if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, if you look for it as for silver and search for it for a hidden treasure, what is the promise that we have here? It says, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. And one of the things here, as we look at this conditional statement that I fully believe here, is that we won't understand the fear of the Lord and we won't find the knowledge of God unless we do these if parts up top, right? Like, how can you understand God if you don't accept God's words?
Can I interject?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, the use of the word fear is difficult for me to wrap my head around. My Bible says in the notes, let's see, involves having a personal relationship with God and knowing what he is teaching us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and this is related to the word fear of God, right?
Yeah.
And then, let's see, loving reverence for God that includes submission to his lordship and to the commands of his word. Just, I don't understand the word fear being used.
Yeah.
You know, because I can't comprehend that God wants us to fear him. To me, God wants us to love him and follow him.
Right. That is, you know, for myself too, had been for a long time an issue as well. So I'll tell you how I see it, and Steve can interject, or Phil or whoever else there can interject as well. You know, when we look at fear, there's a couple different things here. You know, there's this terror, this that you're so terrorized of something, and I don't think that's the proper use of the fear here. Like, we're not supposed to be so terrorized of God that we're afraid. This fear is not the same as afraid. Then there is this. I often heard of this as well as kind of like a respectfulness. And for me, the way that I understand, or the way I personalize it, is thinking of like farm machinery. So you are, you know, like a PTO shaft, something that you could wrap yourself up and kill you. You know what that thing is capable of doing. And so you have this healthy fear of it, this healthy respect of it. Not that you're not going to be around it, and not that you're not going to interact with it, but you have like, the respect of what this thing could do. And when I hear the fear of the Lord, last week in at least in my Bible here, it talks about fear as well, and there was this thing of this awe-inspiring thing. And so, you know, when you think of, you know, I've never been to the Grand Canyon, but I've told you go out there, it takes your breath away. I've been on some really high places, and it takes your breath away. It's this awe-inspiring thing, but there's also this healthy, like, it comes back to this respect thing as well, and what can actually happen if you don't respect it well. You could fall and die and hurt yourself. And oftentimes when I hear the fear of the Lord, that's for me, that's what comes about, this awe-inspiring and this respect of God. Like, you can love it, and we should be loving God, but we also have this respect of God that, you know, just because God loves us doesn't mean that we can go around doing whatever we want now with that. And again, I look at that with like farm machinery. You know, I love running a tractor, but I have this healthy respect of what could happen if I just decide to, you know, go over hills with it and do something I shouldn't do with it. So that's how I see the fear of the Lord. I don't know, Steve, is there something you can add to that?
No, not really. That sounded like a great definition. You know, I always thought of reverence and respect.
Mm-hmm.
And talk about fear the Lord. Well, give the Lord reverence and respect. And I like what you said, Ryan. You know, respect out of what, you know, God can do, what that machinery can do. You need to, you know, have a respect respect for that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I totally agree. That was a great definition, Ryan.
I agree too.
Greg, does that make sense, or is that still what's your
No,
thoughts on that?
I just, reading it sounds a little odd. I will replace the word fear with reverence and respect because I can wrap my head around that. That makes sense.
Yeah,
And I'll just run that through my mind, 15, 20 times and be there.
Say it, write
Yeah.
write it,
Right.
and read it. Yeah.
We'll quiz you on it next week, Greg.
Right.
So my question while you were explaining that, Ryan, was does our image of God from the Old Testament change to the God of the New Testament? But I think what you said, God was asking the Israelites for their reverence and respect. But,
Yeah.
And if we didn't do that, he was to be feared. There's some nasty things happen.
Yeah. And I think, we are under that new covenant with Christ. And however, we're still, we still have some prophecy for us as well in Revelation there of, here's what's going to happen if you're not following Christ and everything that means.
Yeah.
Here is what's going to happen here. Now, we're not the same as, God talked with them in a little bit more direct manner and said, if you're not doing this, I'm going to, physically, we're going to have some issues here. And we've seen that with the exile last quarter. But, I still believe, that, we have that prophecy here in Revelation and yeah.
So
But that's,
Solomon,
go ahead.
Solomon, he was blessed with this wisdom, but what happened?
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
He
married
no
all these-
longer applied the wisdom.
Yeah.
Or used the
He got
wisdom.
he got too big for himself.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
And
yeah.
see that as an issue today. Even with me, it's like, okay, I know this stuff, but am I doing it? Am I following through? I think for most Christians, we know a whole lot more than what we're applying and what we're using.
Yeah. Solomon too. I mean, if you read about Solomon, he kind of went down a slippery slope, and I often heard about that. Heard that type of language as well. You want to be very careful. You're not doing something that's going to then lead to something else, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're at the end of your life, and you're so far away from where you were. If you read about Solomon, he had hundreds of wives, and that in itself was part of the downfall from worshiping God only. And there's something to be said about power and wealth too.
Yeah, it wasn't just his wives. I mean, he
No,
sacrificed
it wasn't.
his children.
Yeah.
He was the first arms dealer.
Yeah. I mean, you look at Solomon. He had a really good foundation and a good start, and then it kind of went downhill. Which then, when we look here, this should be all the more for us. Hearing from a guy that had it all and had the favor of the Lord, and years later not, and we benefit now from his writings here in Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, and being able to, I could just see Solomon kind of being like maybe like some of us here, talking to children and saying, don't do this, you're going down the wrong path. And how many times do people need to learn themselves and experience it? I kind of wish we could replicate the lessons learned from experiences somehow to teach them without them experiencing it, but I don't know how to do that, and I don't know if you can do that. You almost have to kind of experience it yourself, but I don't know. But hopefully we can pull something from what Solomon and what happened in his life, and seeing what happened with his there, and really working on our lives here and applying that knowledge that we have.
Yeah.
We have here Phil.
That's where that word compromise comes in.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. You're exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. You see here in verse 5, you will understand the fear of the Lord and you will find the knowledge of God. And again, this is that second part of that conditional statement. And so, if we want to understand the fear of the Lord, the respect and reverence of God, and we want to find the knowledge of God, we need to be doing what we see there in verses 1 through 4 with that. All right, our second half of the lesson then goes on here with through 6 and 11. So let's take a look at this. It says, "For the Lord gives wisdom," verse 6, "For the Lord gives wisdom, and from his mouth come knowledge and understanding." All right, we see this here, that the Lord giving wisdom. It's not something that I think I talked about that last week as well. It's not something that... if you don't have it, you can get it. It's not something that you're just born with, and oh, this really wise person, all of a sudden, you look at them, oh, they're this was a gift to them. The Lord gives it if you ask for it. It's not something that's elusive to us here, and I think I see that here in verse 6. The Lord gives wisdom; from his mouth come knowledge and understanding. We see that from before here as well, or in Jesus' time in Matthew. Jesus countered one of the devil's temptations with the words, "Man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." So if we're looking for knowledge of God, this knowledge, it comes right from him. So we know it's true. We know that it's not something that is generated here by the world. The Lord gives wisdom; from his mouth come knowledge and understanding, which is the base, the root of wisdom. Verse 7, "He holds victory in store for the upright." And the translation for that the commentary has here, it's success. So we see success in victory, right? He holds success in store for the upright. He holds victory in store here. And so we're seeing here that one, and I like what the commentary says here. One never outgrows the need for the Lord's wisdom. One never outgrows the need for the Lord's wisdom, right? And this success, this victory that we have in Christ, in all that with wisdom, God has stored up for us, right? And we follow after him, and we look for that knowledge, and we look for that understanding, and we live wise, godly lives. That success is there through this wisdom. And we see the last part of 7 that can explain the first part of 7, right? He is a shield to those whose walk is blameless. Again, not saying that bad things aren't going to happen. I don't think we get that promise necessarily as Christians. But if we walk blameless lives and we are searching for wisdom and this insight and this knowledge that comes from God, God's going to be a shield for us from those attacks and from those. That makes sense?
Yes. I'm studying for Psalms 37 for this week for small group study.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for Friday.
And what's Psalm 37 say?
It's about the wicked people, and that we need to not fret. It starts off, "Don't fret," and it says, "Don't fret" 3 times. In the verse 1 and verse 7 and 8, don't fret. So that means it's very important that we're not to fret. The believers are not to fret. And to trust the Lord. That we need to that we need to trust him. And that we're not promised that there's going to be collateral damage. I mean, it doesn't say that there is collateral damage in those words. That's my words. Because of Greg going to war. So I use his words. Collateral damage. Because because of sin. There is collateral damage. I mean, we know that because the wheat and the weeds are planted together. We know that. But there is going to be collateral damage anyway. and it's going to rain on both.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
they're not going to be separated until the Lord comes anyway.
Right.
But we have to trust him, and he's gonna come back,
Yeah.
and he's
Yeah.
gonna separate us. And it's a good psalm to
Yeah.
study.
Yeah. That's good.
37. Yeah. And
Yeah.
this verse fits with that.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So I didn't even realize that.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good.
It's kind of fun seeing,
That's
these things
exciting.
interact and all that, right?
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. As I look at verse 7 here, yeah, it's an encouragement to myself. That last word, blameless, in verse 7, the commentary here says that it can also be translated integrity, right? Whose walk is walking in integrity. And think about that. People who you think are really wise and who walk with God and are wise and all that. I think that's a encouragement to us to continue to seek after wisdom, because God says here there's going to be success and victory in store for those who do that. He's going to be a shield for that. Like you said, not necessarily that there might be that collateral damage and there might be some hardships that go along, but people can get through that, can survive that, and it's because of this right here, of what God's promises to us for that.
There's always hope. There's always hope.
Always hope. That's right.
There's always hope.
That's right. Then we get verse 8, for regards the course of the just and protects the way of his faithful ones. Right, and that kind of goes along here with verse 7 there as well. This we seek after wisdom, we seek after knowledge, the fear of the Lord, and what we have as a promise here, he guards the course of the just, protects the way of his faithful ones. And then we get to the verse 9. In verse 9 it says, then you will understand what is right and just and fair, every good path. And we just came off of a quarter of justice here in the Old Testament, and the minor prophets and all that. And how many of us don't want to understand right now what is right and just and fair? Boy, our lives could be a lot easier right now, right? If we know what is right and just and fair. We may not even know it, but understand it. And I see this as an encouragement for us, that if we follow what is up there in verses 1 through 4, the promise then is that we will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. And once we know that, then we will know what is right and just and fair. And I don't know anyone who would say, oh, I don't want to know what is right, just, and fair, right? This is something that we strive for, and we've seen lots of people protesting for what is right, just, and fair, and all that. And I see that here with this wisdom and knowing God and all that. We have at the end of verse 9 there, it says every good path. Every good path. And, if we want to understand that, we're going to take verses 1 through 4 to heart. Verse 10, for wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. All right. We understand the fear of the Lord. We find the knowledge of God, and then wisdom enters our heart, because we're going to be doing this. This verse 10 is kind of talking a little bit about like a relationship with God. Right? This wisdom will enter our heart. How does wisdom enter our heart? Wisdom is an action. Wisdom is putting knowledge and applying knowledge, putting knowledge into action. And so for wisdom to enter in our heart, we need to be actively doing something. And part of that is this relationship with God that we see all the way up top there in verse 1 and 2, right? Accepting the word, storing up the commands, active listening, crying aloud, and all that. Verse 10 is really showing us here a relationship with the Lord, so much so that wisdom now enters our heart. And hopefully of people that you look up to who are strong in their Christian walk, and because they have this relationship with the Lord, like wisdom is just flowing out of them because of verse 10 here. Wisdom will enter your heart. And it says knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. We often talk about things that are good for our soul, right? What's good for your soul? If someone would ask you, what's good for your soul? What's good? Maybe some music, or seeing a sunset, or being outdoors in nature. That's good for our soul.
Encouraging words from a friend.
Encouraging words from a friend, right? Exactly. It's good for your soul. It says knowledge here will be pleasant to your soul. Once that wisdom enters in your heart, this knowledge of God will be pleasant to your soul. And I think that's, when we have this relationship with God, and we're intentional and active in working on our relationship with God, our soul is pleasant. It's in a better place. And I think that's what we see here in verse 10. And then finally here, verse 11, discretion will protect you and understanding will guard you. Ending up here with wisdom here. Discretion will protect you, right? And what I see here of this is, we are in a relationship with God. We're going to know what's to say up there. I will understand what is right, just, and fair. And so this understanding and this wisdom and this knowledge of God is going to protect us, because we're going to use discretion, right? Discretion is knowing, what I should do and what I shouldn't do. And so discretion will protect you. And I feel, literally with that, it's going to protect you from harmful things here on earth, and understanding will guard you. The same thing there as well.
If
yes.
we look at the things that are going on in the world right now, the battle right now is for the heart.
Yeah.
I mean, with everything that's going on, I mean, with these protests, the rioting, I mean, if we look past all that, the battle is for our heart.
Yeah.
So, and we're looking at this, the discretion will protect you. We have to protect our shield. If we go to Ephesians 6, we have to protect that shield. Mm-hmm. And that shield is our faith.
Yeah.
And it is, so we have to protect our shield. We have to protect the mind. We have to protect our mind that leads to our heart. So that's what this is. The last verse, discretion is to protect you, our understanding, and guard you. We're putting on our armor.
Yeah.
We're putting on our armor here.
Right. And that's important. I mean, this wisdom, this knowledge, and all that, that's foundational. You have to have that before you go out into the world, right?
That's what Solomon is telling us, to put on our armor.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Without telling us.
Yeah. That's right.
But I think it's more than just spiritual though too. But I think that using discretion, it would save us physically from doing stupid things. About some things. So I think it's more than just a spiritual thing, which is very important. But I think it also can relate to physical harm as well.
And if we look at Proverbs, which we will here in the next couple of weeks, but a lot of what Solomon is saying here is that physical aspect to it as well. I mean, there's the spiritual component in our heart and all that, but there's also this physical is saying, if you want to keep yourself safe here physically, then you need to be doing these types of things. But yeah, I like what he has to say here, because this is the foundation. This is for us. We're going into the world. The foundational components right here. For us to stand firm and to thwart the devil's attack and all that, we need to have this foundation.
Yep.
So that is in our lesson text there, 1 through 11. As a conclusion here, a couple of things that we can work on. The first one is, how do we go about keeping this intense seeking spirit after God. If we look at verses 1 through 4, how do we continue to keep that that intense search after God and God's spirit and God's character and the knowledge and all that? I think Steve, you said a lot of Christians around and us included, we know a lot of things, but how do we go about applying what we know and continue to find things that we may not know, and continue learning and so I think that's a challenge for us to continue that intense, especially there in verse 4, continue to look for it as a hidden treasure or as something that, something that's going to consume you. Following after God should be just like that.
Yeah, I think that goes back to accountability among Christians.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's big, like through Sunday school classes, holding one another accountable. Hey, what are you doing? In your life, what's happening in your life? What are you doing? Small groups. But, I think just holding one another accountable is important.
Yeah. No, I like it.
Yes.
All that needs to be intentional.
Intentional.
Yes,
exactly
Phil.
Right.
Absolutely.
You're right. And that's, that's one of the things that we see here a lot of times in Proverbs. And I'll come back to it again. It's not a passive, our faith is not a passive faith. It's not, let me just let it wash over me type thing. It's just activeness. And I like that intentional. And what are some ways, that we can think of that our church intentionally helps us to continue to seek after God? I think our church is good at doing that, but I also don't want to say that we're good at doing that because then we get complacent. And so, what are some things, that are intentional? And one of those intentional things, is the garden there at the church, and finding different ways. We have young people that are going on mission trips and other things like that. This is intentional seeking after the Lord. And that I like that word. It has to happen. We have to make it happen, and it's just not some happy accident that comes about. It's something that we need to continue to work towards there. So yeah, I like that. That's good. The other thing here is, and I like what the commentary here has to say. Our lesson text also highlights the necessity for a human teacher to convey to students the value of wisdom and thus of the knowledge of Lord. We see that here for us to learn, we need to have examples, and I think we see that here in verses 1 through 11 of the importance of, for us, if we're going to claim this life of Christian life, that we need to be actively doing it. And if we want to teach wisdom to people, we need to be the example of wisdom, right? If we want people to learn wisdom, we need to be teaching it and doing it. And so that's for us here. Often heard many times. You're a role model to someone, whether you know it or not. If you're interacting with people are looking at you and looking at what you're doing. And since wisdom is an action verb or action word and all that, for us to teach wisdom, we need to be modeling it. We need to be doing it and making it known to others as well. And so, I like that part here with that. All right. Any final thoughts or comments before we end?
No, thank you, Ryan. That was excellent.
You betcha. Oh, Proverbs, a lot of fun. A lot of fun reading. Yeah, Greg.
Yes, I do have a question.
Yes.
How will the garden at the church get watered?
There you go, Steve.
When I went out there, when Debbie and after church, we went out there and we walked the garden, and I was looking for a spigot, and I didn't see a spigot. So is the assumption that you're going to have some young, strong, healthy teenage boys and girls hauling buckets?
Yes. There's a faucet on the side of the church where the air handlers are for the heating and air conditioning. There's a faucet there that, yeah, we carried buckets up and watered the plants. And right now, the biggest thing is to have it rototilled. You know, we need to get the weeds down now. So that's the biggest thing right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
if
I was
anyone's
reading-
watching this, Steve needs some help with the garden, and so contact him and let's get it going. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, just wondering how it's going to be watered. I thought there would be a spigot closer by. But I guess not.
Unfortunately, there's not.
Maybe we can run a hose out there or something. I'm not sure where this is at. Is it really far away?
It's across the parking lot. We're towards the Oaks
Across,
side.
Okay,
across the handicap.
gotcha.
So there will be a sign up there on Sunday that says community garden, so you can see it.
Good, good.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yep. Hey, we're going to end with this here. The thought to remember here in our lesson is God's wisdom never depreciates in value. And I like what the commentary there said. You know, we're never too old to continue to increase our knowledge and wisdom in the Lord. And so let's keep that in mind. Wisdom, God's knowledge is valuable, that we need to be searching after it with all we have, because it never depreciates in value and will lead us in the right path here. So, hey, thank you again for participating, and have a good night.
Thank you for teaching
Yeah.
us.
All
You
right.
bet.
y'all have
Thank
a
you,
good
Ryan.
evening.